How's everybody doing today? I want to apologize for the lack of content. I try, but I've been absurdly busy. I have just now got back out of Northern Africa. I should be asleep right now, but my sleep schedule is so ungodly broken that I just woke up way too early on this Sunday. I got back last night and I just haven't converted my sleep back. I was in Northern Africa commissioning equipment for a steel mill facility for a sheik or whatever in a completely different country that owns the facility or whatever. I don't know. It's always His Royal Highness's Sheikh Mohammed, five more names. And then it's like the country's wealth fund that it's like his private bank account kind of thing. A little bit, it was an all right job, if you will, given the circumstances. Algeria has a very, very complicated recent history. It's pretty fascinating if you ever want to look into it. Algeria, there was a major kind of a three-way fight between the French government, the Algerian people, and then, of course, the French Foreign Legion, which historically considered Algeria to be their homeland. And really, really fascinating how there was a push by the French military to collapse the French government to put Charles de Gaulle into power, assuming that Charles de Gaulle was going to continue the fight to hold on to Algeria. And then as soon as he was in power, he kind of turned his back on the French Foreign Legion. And then there was the generals' push, where the French Foreign Legion generals kind of tried to collapse the government again. And that failed completely. And the only reason why the French Foreign Legion wasn't completely disbanded was during World War II. Pretty much the French Foreign Legion was the only group of people that were willing to continue to fight against the Nazis. Although some units fought on the Vichy French side. It's a bit complicated. So naturally, being a foreigner there, that's always kind of risky. And I would have been, I honestly, on part of me would have preferred if I was there by myself. I wasn't there by myself. I had two junior engineers that were getting training from me. This, for the one guy, it was his first ever commissioning. This really nice young man from Turkey. And then this young lady who I've done a lot of work with. I call her Trudy because I can't pronounce her name very well. She doesn't seem to have a problem with me calling her Trudy, and kind of everybody started calling her that. This wasn't her first job, but this was her first ever medium voltage job. And it was one of those awkward situations where I had to brief the kids before we went out there how, like, you guys are not leaving my line of sight unless you're in your bedroom. Other than that, I have line of sight on you. When one of us goes to the bathroom, we all go to the bathroom together. This is very, very important. Trudy, I think, understood this. She's from a part of India that's very, very potentially dangerous for young women to walk, by themselves. Oz, the young man from, that's not his, I give everybody nicknames. Oz is like the first two letters of his last name. Oz, he, I, it was kind of a little awkward, but I had to explain to Oz. I'm like, Oz, you speak Turkish, you don't speak Arabic, and you don't speak the Arabic of Algerians. So you're going to stick out just as much as I do. They're liable to think, you got to be careful here, man, kind of thing. But for the most part, the workforce at the facility were very, very nice and professional. The steel workers and stuff, this is a huge deal. They want this steel mill. They want investment here. The unemployment rate in Algeria is brutally high, and this is what feeds the various extremist groups and so on. But it's one of those things where I was explaining to the kids, we have to have a schedule, but we can't have a routine. Schedule, we check in all the time, consistently, every hour on the hour. Unless you're asleep, I want regular check-ins. We're eating meals together. Nobody's going off on their own. We're not doing the touristy stuff. We're not doing anything like that. We're here to get the work done, stay safe, and get the hell out. But we're not going to have a routine. We're not going to eat at the same place every single day. You're not going to accept rides from people. You're not going to, we are not going to get separated, because I really didn't want to have a situation where one of us gets kidnapped or whatever, and God forbid something happens. I tend to be pretty paranoid when I'm doing jobs. And I want to be very, very clear. This isn't just a Northern Africa kind of thing. This is something that I instill in my junior coworkers if we're doing work in like Europe, in the United States, and so on. I've done crane commissioning jobs, automation jobs in ports for New Jersey and New York. I have to be very careful who I talk to and what I say because the New York criminal syndicates are so heavily invested in messing with automation projects and trying to stop them. They don't want automation because it makes theft almost impossible. And so it's one of those things you got to be careful. You got to be careful what you say. You got to be careful where you park. I think the last time I did a job for a New Jersey terminal, my rental car tires got slashed, I want to say 4 times. I was only there for a week. Of course, I didn't complain about it. I just kept getting the wheels fixed, and I kept my head down and got the job done. Because I'm not about to like get my head cut off by some Italian American motherfucker because he can't be bothered to go to school and get a real job. I'm not a fan of organized crime. I'm not a fan about how we try to celebrate a lot of this stuff because a lot of these people are remarkably stupid and they can't succeed in life. And so what they do is they just rob from hardworking people. So I've been busy with that. The other thing I have to admit, and I don't know how people are going to take this. I have to regularly take breaks from Patrick. I can't consume Pat content all the time because there's things that Pat does that brings up a lot of horror or a lot of angry, bad memories for me. I'm not talking about getting blown up in Afghanistan, but I'm talking about like trying to help out veterans and stuff. So like what I mean by this is, I caught Dan's podcast, which again, I got to shout out to Dan. I don't know, this is because I'm pretty much deaf and I listen through hearing aids. Dan's got a hell of a broadcasting voice. Much better, I know, than mine. I'm not even sure really what my voice sounds like. I just know my voice, I imagine, sounds really, really bad. Dan doesn't have a stuttering problem, and so on. Dan, I think, presents a radio voice really strong and good, and so on. And the woman, I forget her name. I apologize. I'm so bad with names, and I'm also really half dead, exhausted. I think she adds an interesting number two. And of course, the guy, was it Bomia from, Quebec, New Jersey? He's always an interesting fella. It's funny to me because it's like all three of them I could imagine having in my house. And I think like the Boomia guy, I would have to probably pull him aside and be like, hey man, I want you to be on your best behavior. I want my wife and my kid. And I would imagine at some point, especially if he was having a few beers or something, he might say something that'd be like, hey man, you're crossing that line. Bring it back. I don't think he would cause an issue with me whatsoever, kind of thing. I think I could have a conversation with all three of these folks. Whereas if I had Pat in my house, I think the moment that something tertiary to politics gets mentioned, I wouldn't have to kick Pat out of my house. I think my wife would. Like Pat would just say something that would just enrage her. And she'd just be like, get out of my house before you will either leave under your own power or via an ambulance kind of thing. Pat's the kind of guy that when my wife gets very, very angry, her American accent disappears. And she gets a very thick Polish accent when she's pissed off. I think Dan can probably, Dan Mullen knows exactly what I'm talking about. Where his wife, I believe she's Brazilian, right? I could be wrong on this. But I'm sure he's had situations where like she gets so pissed off, her English goes out the window. And it's just like, babe, I'm not sure what I did, but inglés, por favor. I know that's Spanish and not Portuguese. I don't know Portuguese. But it would just be interesting if I ever try to have a conversation with Pat. But I'm rambling. I apologize. My whole point in this, and like what I'm talking about, is Dan was covering the transcripts of his protective order that he tried to get under against Somerville Dan. And a protective order is probably one of the easiest things to get legally against somebody. I mean, it is on par with trying to get, when I me and my wife bought a really old house, and we had to gut the whole thing. And I've had people at work asking me about it, and they always assume that me getting the permits and everything, that must have been a nightmare. The permits, I was like, no, permits are easy to get. They're super easy to get, especially compared to other countries. Getting permits in the U.S., very, very easy, as long as you pay attention to how to file stuff and you actually have something that, like, you're not trying to do something illegal, like trying to put like a 5-story home 20 feet off the runway at the local airport. Like, they're not going to allow you to do that kind of thing. And the whole purpose of permits is to protect yourself. So Dan's reading through this thing, and it's pretty humorous. And you can tell that Pat doesn't really understand. Like, for a guy that's in court all the time, Pat doesn't seem to understand how any of this legal shit works. And it blows my mind that he got this woman's battered shelter to write up the paperwork for him. And I have to, like, I really wish I was a fly on the wall to hear what Pat actually told these people. And, I'm certain that this is probably the first time ever not the first time ever, probably the first time in 10, 15 years of their existence, that they wrote up the paperwork for a protective order for somebody, and they didn't get the protective order. And the judge showed a remarkable amount of patience. Everybody in that courtroom showed a remarkable amount of patience to Pat, because what they could have just done is, you filed the paperwork wrong, get it, or they wouldn't even explain to you the paperwork was wrong. They just say, nope, we're not doing this, case dismissed or whatever, everybody move on. And the judge took the time to explain to Pat, this is what you have to do. This is how you have to refile it, da, 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 da. And Pat never did anything with this. He just, I hit the very first stumbling block. I'm not going to bother with this. And again, I'm not saying that I want Dan to have a protective order against him. I think it's a bullshit protective order. But it's also one that's really, really freaking easy to get. Like, this is where, you can have a situation where people just start getting protective orders against each other. Like, if there's like major drama going on, and everybody has a protective order, and it becomes like a complete shit show of people throwing legal paperwork at each other. And Pat couldn't even get that far. And the whole reason why I have to take regular breaks from Pat, this is the same mentality I run into with veterans I'm trying to help out. I got a guy, for the last 3 flipping years, I've been trying to help him get into community college. And in 3 years, I have not been able to get him to to basically apply to college, community college, successfully. There's always an excuse. And I can text him every single day up until the point of the last day for applying. And he'll keep coming up with excuses and blowing me off until a week afterwards, he calls me up. Man, they wouldn't take my application. Like, I could try to log into their website. They wouldn't let me. And it's like, mother freaker, I told you about this 3 months ago. Why did you wait until the week afterwards? I had other stuff to do. What other stuff? You're unemployed, you live in your mother's basement, and you drink and smoke weed all day long. And it gets frustrating because I'll see these people that can turn their lives around, but they just won't. I'm of the opinion that I don't believe there's a single midlife crisis in everybody's life. I think there's multiple moments in your life where you're at a precipice and you're somewhere in your life that you don't like where you're at. And there's one of two things you can do. You could either do the right thing and make your life better, or you could do the wrong thing. And you constantly are reinventing yourself. You're doing this. I'm doing this. We're all doing this. I'm a different person than I was in elementary school. I'm a different person than I was in foster care. I'm a different person than I was in the military. I'm a different person than I was in college. I'm a different person than I was when I was single as an engineer. I am a completely different person married with a son. Completely different. And there have been points in my life where I'm like, oh my God, I don't like where I'm at. What do I do? Do I make the right decision or I make the wrong decision? Now, for me, this has happened to me a couple of times. Waking up in Germany, intubated, with the right side of my body effectively destroyed. Uh, that is a moment. Waking up in the emergency room after I had a grand mal seizure because I tried to taper because I was going to be working in our home office in Appalachia. And I knew I couldn't keep drinking the way I had been drinking. And I've been hiding the drinking from everybody, my wife, my pregnant wife, my coworkers, my boss. And me trying to taper nearly killed me. That's how bad my drinking was. I was at a precipice. I could have said, you know what, this isn't a problem. A lot of people wake up with a catheter in their dick. Or I could have listened to my wife and my boss, who basically told me, you're going into treatment and you're going to work at it. And if you're not going to work at it, she's out of your life. You'll never get to meet your kid. And my boss is like, we're going to fire your ass because there's no way you're going to be. We're going to do breathalyzers and urinalysis on you every hour on the hour, and you're going to flunk it. And then we're going to kick you. We're going to fire you with cause because you're drunk at work. I had to reinvent myself. It was absolutely awful. Absolutely. Anyone that thinks rehab is easy, I went to a really nice rehab that my company paid for. It still sucked. There's a reason why they had to take away my shoelaces and any kind of strings and everything, because I was losing my coping mechanism and so on. But I see Pat, and I see a guy, and I know there's going to be people out there that when they hear this, they are not going. A lot of you guys are not going to agree with me when I say this. Pat is a very successful individual. He is. He absolutely is. If you take away his spurging out on the internet, his horrible attitude, his misogyny, his sexism, his going out of his way to alienate and piss people off, Pat's pretty successful. He's a published author. He's published way more books than I ever have. Yes. His stand-up's honestly not that bad. I used to do nightclub work. I used to be a security or like a bouncer. And one of the places I used to man the door at was a comedy club. And let me tell you, whew, Pat's YouTube video, he had a lot more interaction with the audience, positive interaction with the audience than most of the people I saw at that comedy club in Baltimore. But he continues consistently to be this individual that will not acknowledge. It's like, Pat, you're no longer a 25-year-old. You can't keep day drinking like you used to. You can't keep eating like you used to. You can't keep faking that you're a health fit guy when you're obviously putting on weight and stuff. You got to start taking care of yourself. You got to reinvent yourself. You probably should get a job. Or at the very least, take a break from social media. I'm not saying he should delete his Twitter account, but what I am saying is, dude, you should try to go 2 weeks without Twitter. Go 2 weeks without Twitter. And see if you're happy after those 2 weeks. I guarantee he's going to be miserable the first 3 days. It's going to be like a cokehead. Try to give it up. But Pat is very funny to me, but at times I have to take breaks from him. Because he reminds me of too many of the guys that I've tried to help out over the years. Guys that I served with who are still living in the days of when they were 19 years old. And I say, you ain't a 19-year-old anymore. You're not in the military anymore. It was a job. You don't work that job no more. You got to do something else. But anywho, on the screen, I have Mike Battleborn's tweet thread up. I have to say, Mike Battleborn, there's a toss-up between Mike and Leslie as to who are the more entertaining Pat posters. And both of them are just normal people that act like me. They just stumble into the shit world, the shitstorm that is Pat. we just got sucked in, and for whatever reason, we can't let go. Nobody makes Pat dance like Queen Leslie. Nobody does. This woman can make him rage out without even so much as a single tweet. Doesn't have to do anything. Pat will never let this poor woman go. And I say poor, not because I feel bad for her. Leslie can handle her own. That's what I always love about when Pat talks about like dealing with cyber stalkers and stuff. It's like, Pat, Leslie is a woman on social media. I guarantee you she's got a lot more dick pictures sent to her unsolicited than you ever have. Are you kidding me? There's a reason, I could never, I know I never want to see my wife's not on Twitter. She likes Facebook. I know I could never see my wife's Facebook, like her Facebook messages, because I guarantee you I'd be tracking down random weird guys in our neighborhood, be like, hey, I noticed you like my wife's tits. And I just would start punching, like beating them into the ground kind of thing. Because that's the kind of crap that women have to put up with online. It is. It absolutely is. But with Mike, he's a much more subtle guy. I always liked how he would interject like Pat hot takes into just random tweets of threads of people not associated with Pat. Pat hasn't even been mentioned, but he would just give like a hot take that Pat has, and then when people are like, "What? You're an idiot. What are you talking about?" And then he would show Pat's tweet. It would just subtly just introduce people to the world of Patrick's nonsense. But this hashtag, don't let the idiots win. DLTIW. This whole thread is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Bravo. Slow clap. This is Pat posting. This is how you Pat post, if you ask me. The subtle. This takes time and so on, what he's writing. And it just documents how Pat, oops. Oh, I broke it. It just documents how Pat has talked shit about so many freaking people. And then he can just pull up examples of like people that he started shit with who have actually moved on with life, matured, advanced, and done much better things and stuff. Because they're not obsessed with a random thing on the internet. It really just, it's chef's kiss kind of thing. And again, I think somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is Mike Battleborn is a lawyer out of San Diego who's really into the NBA. That's how I know him on social media. And I don't really want to know him any further than that because I want to respect his privacy and so on. And the whole reason that Pat went off on this dude is because he gave Pat some very, very good, actionable legal advice on how Pat can do certain things to protect the privacy of himself and his family. And Pat's response to this was not only to insult him and threaten him and then block him, but to continue to try to harass him from behind a block, to where Mike was having to answer questions. Like Mike would be on a thread about the NBA playoffs, talking to people about the Lakers, and somebody's like, "Hey, why is this guy saying you're going to prison? Like, what the hell is he talking about?" And Mike's got to, he's got to use a VPN or whatever he's got to do to be able to see the tweets. And then he's like, "Oh, yeah, this is just try to ignore him. He's just some weird guy that I pissed off," kind of thing. This went on for a while until I think eventually Pat realized he wasn't getting a response from him. And of course, Mike's not a woman, so Pat can let it go. It would be interesting. I bet you if Mike changed his username from Mike Battleborn to Michelle Battleborn, I'm willing to bet that all of a sudden Pat would start responding like Leslie, or like he responds to Leslie. I firmly believe that's one of the weirdest things about Pat. He's the prime example of a quote-unquote male feminist or a feminist ally, where it's like, yeah, no, dude, I don't want you anywhere near my wife. I don't want you talking to my wife, and I know my wife doesn't want to talk to you and be anywhere near you, kind of thing. But I digress. It is good to talk to all you guys. Again, I'm really, really sorry. I've been so busy. Hopefully, as the year kind of slows down or comes towards the end, fingers crossed it'll slow down a little bit for me. I'm trying to I'm contemplating maybe not doing field work so much, or not necessarily not doing field work, but not doing the international stuff so much. That's one of the big reasons I've been trying to train all these young kids, all these young international kids. One, the travel sucks. Two, for a lot of these kids, it's easier based on their citizenship for them to get in and out of these countries. And it's not always necessarily easy for me to get a work visa or a guest visa and so on. But anywho, I'm going to let you all go. I hope you have a pleasant weekend. It is fall, my favorite time of the year. Getting closer to that Thanksgiving, my favorite day of the year. I don't know if I'm going to go all out this year because I know the last time I went all out, it really annoyed the hell out of my wife. So I might dial it back a bit to where it's only like a turkey and a ham. Famous last words. Y'all take care. Ciao.